We're joined by CBS News senior foreign correspondent Elizabeth Palmer in Tel Aviv. So, Liz, we're coming up on 24 hours since the U.S. imposed that blockade on the Strait of Hormuz. What kind of impact is it having?
Well, it's kind of confusing. Bottom line is 4 ships have gone through the Straits of Hormuz in the past hours that appear to break the U.S. rules. You know, they loaded up at Iranian ports. It's probable that they've paid this Iranian toll, and yet they were able to sail free. So it really calls into question what this blockade is for. It could be too easy. I don't know if you remember the blockade on Venezuela when some ships were chased across the Atlantic before they were stopped. So maybe it's just too soon. But at the moment, it looks as if oil is flowing and the U.S. Navy is not stopping anybody from traveling. The immediate effect, of course, and this will benefit President Trump, is that the oil price hasn't shot up to above $100 a barrel. I just had a look before we began to speak, and it's hovering just under. But there are really serious consequences. The IMF yesterday warned that the whole world will go into recession if the high oil prices persist and even rise. So let's watch to see what happens in the next hours and days. But I have to tell you right now, I'm confused.
Important context, because I was also looking at the price of oil, Liz, and I wasn't seeing it jump as expected. But, you know, the sort of analysis that you gave there, that makes a lot more sense. I also want to ask you, Israel and Lebanon are set to hold talks in Washington today. I mean, are there any expectations you're going to see a breakthrough without Hezbollah at the table?
In a word, no. These are historic negotiations. The two sides haven't met directly for many years, and they will be supported by the Secretary of State and old hands from the State Department. But the fact is that Lebanon and Israel kind of agree. They would both like Lebanon to control all of Lebanon and not have this sort of usurper, this militia group that actually controls part of the Lebanese sovereign state. So they can agree on that, but how to get there from here, I don't think it's possible without Hezbollah at the table. And Hezbollah is playing the spoiler, as you might expect, calling on the Lebanese to abandon the talks because they won't disarm, and so on. So this is big political theater in Washington, but nobody realistically thinks it's going to resolve what is a very serious issue.
All right, Liz Palmer for us in Tel Aviv. Liz, thank you very much.
CBS News contributor Elliot Ackerman joins us now. He's a former CIA officer and Marine Corps veteran. So, Elliot, I kind of want to start where we were leaving off with Liz before we got to the Lebanon piece of it. I mean, Iran had closed the Strait of Hormuz. Now there's this naval blockade by the U.S., but it doesn't really seem to be taking effect because there are ships going through. I mean, what's your perspective on the strategy here? Because it doesn't seem like that's really taking effect in the way that the U.S. had intended.
I mean, we have, the United States kind of has multiple tracks proceeding at the same time. So, yes, we have this blockade that's going into place, and we'll see how tight that it is. But that's the United States trying to create increased economic leverage over the Iranians. The Iranians are already using economic leverage over the United States and the West by shutting down traffic in the Strait of Hormuz. We have negotiations going on hosted by the Pakistanis over Iran's nuclear program. So all of these efforts are occurring in tandem to try to bring a cessation to this war.
So the U.S. and Iran could be back at the table this week. If those talks fail, what would a re-engagement look like in Iran? If you listen to the president, he says that their Navy has been decimated, that their ballistic missile capabilities have been decimated, their leadership has been decimated. Militarily, Iran has lost this war. Where they are keeping their head above the water, Elliot, as you know, is through the use of economic policies, things that can hurt the global economy, and also with the unpredictability of random drone attacks on their neighbors or even the state of Israel. So what would a campaign look like? Just a continued bombing campaign? And ultimately, what end would that serve?
I think anytime a country is making an argument that they've won a war militarily, that doesn't mean you've won a war, because war is fundamentally a political act. So, if we sort of back up the train here and remember sort of the concept of this war at its outset, it was the United States launched a series of really devastating strikes against the Iranian regime. And in the immediate wake of those strikes, President Trump called upon the Iranian people to stand up and take control of their country. So I think initially there was this strategic hope that in one foul swoop, we could see a complete transformation of Iran and then a transformation of the region. So that hasn't happened, and it doesn't seem as though it's going to happen. So it seems that this war is probably on track, where both the United States and Iran will be maneuvering for leverage against one another, and we'll come to the negotiating table and we'll negotiate some type of future for the Iranian nuclear program, whether that's a cessation of Iranian enrichment for 5 years or 20 years. But we're not going to see, I think, the type of big transformation in the region that the Trump administration and Israel was hoping for.
All right, Elliot Ackerman, always with that clear-eyed analysis for us. Thank you, Elliot.
You.